to SportsSkope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to SportsSkope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this. What is today, the 28th or 20th? Yeah, the 29th day here of June. We are almost at the end of the month. Got a good show for you tonight. More NFL suspensions for gambling. I'll talk about that. Cam Robertson. Jacksonville might not be so hot. They're starting left tackle from last year. They started the first 4 games for them last year, and they're starting right tackle from last year. Both will not be there for the first 4 games this year. I'll talk about that. James Harding, he is opted in his contract to be traded. I'll explain all that. The Knicks got some good news today. It's a much bigger deal than people think. And more here on SportsSkope. We'll go ahead and get our first and only break out of the way, and we'll be back here and hit the ground running in 49 seconds. Hello, SportsSkope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and SportsSkope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to sports, that is sports with an S, another S, scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. Alrighty, then I'm back here live now. All right. So this James Harden story is a little bit more prevalent because it could be related to some movement that could potentially happen this time tomorrow. We all know that at around 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, free agency will begin. Unofficially, it will begin where teams can make moves and sign with players in principle. And then sometime later on next week, they'll be able to, sign those deals and ink them officially. All right. So James Harden quietly, listen, I say quietly because, he's playing with Philadelphia. Joel Embiid had just a monster year. Remember, he ended up getting the MVP. But he quietly had a 21-10 season last year, averaged about 20 in the playoffs. Now, he'll be 34 in August. But since leaving Houston 3 years ago, he's changed his game multiple times, playing point guard, playing off the ball with Kyrie coming in, taking less shots, been a good fill-in player, possibly maybe a third or fourth option on a team. And there were reports today, this afternoon, and he played 58 games last year, too, on top of all that, that there are reports this afternoon that he will opt out, of his contract, and that is so he can let me make sure I got these notes right. Okay, that will make him eligible to be traded immediately, meaning a suitor. This is from, who is this? From LibertyBallers.com. But also, this is also what Shams Charania is tweeting out. Adrian Wojciechowski is putting out. It helps the suitor that perhaps didn't have the cap space, didn't want a hard cap themselves with a sign and trade, will have an easier time acquiring him. So that's the reason for the opt-in, the $36 million plus contract, instead of opting out and becoming a true free agent. I'm sure his agent explained that to him. My thing is he could possibly, there's probably some kind of discussion being made already. Maybe this move has already been made in principle, but hasn't been made public. So we'll see what happens. Now, I was reading that the Clippers would be a suitor also, would be a suitor for James Harden. Now, mind you, Westbrook, they took him on in a trade. He's technically a free agent now and got a lot of suitors. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But Ty Lue, as of today, and I don't see anything changing since we're already almost in July, the Clippers coach is going to stay there. So a possibility of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden playing together would be. They are typically they are the front runners. Yeah, so that is true. Now, so I'll say this: he has a much better resume than I thought he did. Like I said, he's serious about winning since he left Houston 3 years ago. Is he as consistent? He's not the player. He's going to be 34 this year. And yes, Corey, the Knicks have a lot of young players. They've got 4 first-round draft picks. Now, some of them are protected. They got one that if it's 19 or better, they'll get Detroit's. But they've got 4 first-round picks. They've got some space there. They've got some young players there that they can move. They got a boatload of options, is what I'm saying. They got a lot of young players that they can bring in. And, a guy like Harden, they need that consistent 20-point scoring type of move there for a James Harden. And a late story I read, staying on James Harden, that the Phoenix Suns would be a player for a James Harden. Now, Phoenix Suns have been coming up in everything. This owner is like 42 years old, really young, inherited the money, just bought the team back at the earlier this year. Soon as he bought the team, they go out, get Kevin Durant, making big moves. They moved off Monty Williams. They've got Frank Vogel down there, and now they're rumored. They've got Bradley Beal. We've already made that move. Now, they stole that deal. Like Frank Lopez said to Tony Montana in the hit movie Scarface, which is the 40th anniversary, you stole your deal with Sosa. You stole your deal with Sosa. So you stole your deal with Bradley Beal. So now they're talking about maybe bringing in a James Harden. Now, if only way that would work for me is if Harden would come off the bench, and he very well may do that. The 34-year-old very well may do that, come off the bench, play a little point, take that heat off of Durant, who's also going to be 35 next year, I want to say. Yeah, Durant's going to be 35 next year. You've got a Bradley Beal that's been injured, missed 50. He played 50 games last year and 40 the year before that. So he's not, and Harden's played 58 games last year. Pretty good for a guy his age. So that would be a decent pickup there. Also, there were reports that maybe the Suns would be interested in Kyrie Irving. Everything, if they got Kyrie Irving, and I would take a Harden over Irving, but if they got Kyrie Irving with that team, everything good I said about the Suns, just wrap it up in a piece of paper and throw it in the trash can, because that's exactly what would happen to that team. He just wouldn't. There's not enough strong personality to keep him in line. Maybe he could go to play with the LeBron if LeBron comes back to a Laker team, which he's been rumored there. So going back to Harden, staying with Harden, the Knicks would be a pretty good destination for him right now, depending on what kind of extension they want to work out with the opposition. Would it be a year or two? Do you really want to give up those 4 picks for something like, or even one of those picks, and have him on your cap space for a few more years? That is something that management team is going to have to look at and say, we really got to contemplate this, because we have a very young team. I was looking at their roster, and I don't think they got a guy that's going to be playing next year. see if I got that. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So you got Randall may or may not be back. Brunson at 26, totally in his prime. It's his team. Okay. RJ Barrett, 23 years old. Evan Fournier is not going to be he's not going to be a Knick next year. And then Evan Fournier, Derrick Rose is not even on the. I guess they've already officially got rid of. So Josh Hart, I'll talk about him in a minute. Is 28, but you've got guys like Obi Toppin, 25 years old. Emmanuel Quickly, 24 years old. I mean, they've got a super young team. So you can work this out and go out and get a veteran player in their 20s. Maybe a Bradley Beal would have been a pretty good fit here, where he's not too old, but he's old enough. Maybe a Marcus Smart would have been a pretty good fit here, possibly to play off the ball, but he's used to carrying it up. And I think because of Brunson, maybe that's what held them back. They wanted to keep a Brunson, but a Harden who can play shooting guard, can give you that 20 points. And that's something to think about, depending on what you give up for and depending on the other options here. So Harden would be a good – I wouldn't mind seeing him going back to the Clippers. Probably a decent play there. I would take Harden. By the way, Harden's a year younger, and he actually scores more points than Westbrook. Okay, so the Clippers would probably be the best play for him, because the Clippers, this could be their last shot of making a serious title contention run. If you think about it, considering the fact that they're going to run it back with Kawhi and Paul George, you put a Harden on there who's much more coachable than a Westbrook, even though Ty Lue, to his credit, made Westbrook work. Okay. So that's a possibility. The Knicks are a possibility, but the Knicks have a lot of options here. Now, like I said, we're going into free agency. Speaking of the Knicks, we're going into free agency less than 24 hours. The Knicks caught a huge break. Back up to RJ Barrett's backup, who's 28-year-old Josh Hart, who's got some chemistry with Brunson. They went to school together. I want to say at Villanova. So Hart opted onto his $12.9 million to stay with the Knicks. That 10-7 is very consistent with this New York team. It's part of their depth. That was a really good move. That was a really good news story, even though it didn't seem like a big deal for you New York Knicks fans, okay? And I was reading about other players that they simply may be interested in. They could trade for depth, but also to lighten up some space here. They can. They're looking at Miles Turner, the 6'11", 18-8. Sometimes 18 and 12 to 15 points. Miles Turner, still a fairly young player, 26 years old. That would be more where I would want to lean if I'm the Knicks. I would put a lot into getting a guy like that, because that's your young core there. I don't think you're too young where you need a older guy just to have a veteran presence per se. They could possibly squeeze both of these guys if they really set their mind to it. With this New York Knicks team, they lack scoring. They play good team defense. The chemistry's there. A guy like Josh Hart played really well with them. They got him at the trade deadline. I like what he brought to this team. And the fact that he opted in, this tells me this is good chemistry with the team. There's not a lot of fake, likeness of the head coach and what Thibodeau's trying to do, what Brunson, you can see that it's legit. Kind of reminds me a little bit of another team's been down in the NFL, a Detroit Lions, where coaches are wanting to return, players are signing back with the team under Dan Campbell with the Lions, who are expected to win their division next year and go to the playoffs. I want to say they finished very strong, sweeping the Green Bay Packers this time at the end of last season. So the Knicks have a lot of options here. Harden, Clippers would probably be my top choice if I'm Harden. Then maybe a backup at a rotational guy with the Suns. And of course, he don't want to fool. Irvin is like a cancer. Nobody wants to deal with Irvin. And then obviously the Knicks, but you really got to see what you're giving up if you're a Knicks fan. You don't want to give up all them draft picks. You just want to make this thing work out where you can get that trade, save some money here. Philly can add some young talent there as well. So that's an interesting story there. Like I said, very good. Going back to the Knicks, yeah, very good opt-in for the Knicks. Love to see that team get a Miles Turner, very much more consistent player there. Got some experience. Like to see how he would fit here. I was reading about Karl Anthony Towns, how much he would cost. And one article says his defense is hit and miss suspect. So you got to wonder if he's a Thibodeau guy or not. I've read conflicting reports. Some say he is. Some say not so fast because his defense isn't consistent. So those are stories I'm monitoring myself here. And I do think the Knicks have, hey, look, this team took the Miami Heat to 6 games. We find out how good the Miami Heat are. This is the first time they've won a playoff series in a long time. I want to say, 10, 12 years. Remember the last playoffs they went at 2 years ago, the Knicks did not win that series. Atlanta put them out in 5 games. But they beat a very young but talented Cleveland Cavalier team. And they pushed that, what we found out to be a really good Miami Heat team and playoff-wise to 6 games, okay? All right, now, so it's going to be an amazing, really interesting next 24 hours in my opinion. Okay, now to the huge football news. Huge football news. Let me say this about gambling. Mike Florio with Pro Football Talk, he says that he's not sure if the players understand these rules completely. All right, from what I gather, and it took me hours to look through article after article after article to figure out exactly what the situation is, because how in the bleep are these NFL clubs, organizations, the league itself finding out that these players are gambling? Okay, so essentially the gambling books are notifying the NFL that the current players are playing. So apparently, and I'm just assuming this because this is what Florio is, a guy who's also got a legal background, writes for Pro Football Talk. Don't agree with Mike on everything, but he's good at finding out information like this. So I play FanDuel. It's an app, very popular app. Run a lot of stuff with the NFL. NFL's used to FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM Bet, for example. What they have is, from what I'm gathering, some kind of database with every NFL active player. I think every organization or the league itself, they check every roster to every organization, and they submit these players every year. Think about it. We got the draft, a lot of database. What, 1,700, 15, 17? I can't remember how many players in the league now. Let's just round it to 15. So you got 1,500 players coming and going into this huge database, okay? And so when these players pick this phone up, Corey, and they place a bet, that database notifies these books, okay? Somebody with the books, there's some kind of red flag. They'll say, okay, so-and-so from at this location, place this bet. Because the Tennessee Titans starting right tackle for 16 games. This has got to be so frustrating for Nashville fans, for the Titans fan nation here. Nicholas Petit Farit Fareed, and he's not very petite because he's a right tackle in the NFL. I mean, petite, I think about a good-looking woman, even though it's not spelled the same, it sounds the same. You know, she's very petite. She's not manly, but that's this guy's name, Nicholas Petit Fareed, who the second-year player out of Ohio State was supposed to have been their starting right tackle. He's now been suspended for, check this out, gambling at the facility, not on football, he'd be done for the whole year, but he is gambling at the facility on sports. So here's the rules, according to Mike Florio, who's, searched the NFL. As an NFL player, you can gamble on non-NFL stuff as long as it's not at one of the facilities. I talked to this guy, I think his name's, either way, he's through Dan Dave Harris's network here. I did an interview with him. He asked me to come on his program a few weeks ago. And he's got a talk show out of Detroit. And he told me Jameson Williams, their second-year wide receiver out of Alabama, former first-round pick, looked to have a breakout season this year, was suspended 6 games for, air quote, gambling at the facility on the NCAA tournament. And he's saying the facility is considered, they also own, he says the Lions own some kind of hotel in town. And he's saying if the player was using his phone in that hotel in town for whatever reason, he says that seems like, something that he would have an issue with. So I don't know if this guy was just making a baseball bet. This right tackle was suspended for 6 games or whatever. If he bet on other sports, betting on the NBA playoffs, you name it, they're doing these OTAs. He picks up his app phone here. He goes to the little FanDuel app, and then he takes the over and under in an NBA game or something like that. This is what I'm getting. And then boom, 6-game suspension, loses hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Tennessee's out, who's already got issues on the offensive line. They're out that right tackle. Now, so you say, well, what does this mean for this team? I had them at 9-8. 10-7 before this came about. Now, listen, this is, I think the reason why a lot of people come back to my program, because I don't tell you what you want to hear as a fan. I tell you what I really think that's going to happen. I'm not one of these contrarian people like a Paul Kaharski used to work with the Tennessean and followed the Titans for over 20-something years now. He's kind of a contrarian guy just to be a contrarian. I'm not one of those people, but I'm also not one of these fanboys or public relation-like guys that's going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm just going to tell you right now, there's too many question marks on this team for me to consider them to be a playoff team as of today. I said borderline before this news came out that he's going to be suspended. And I was reading their team reporter here, Turin Davenport, the current team reporter that works for ESPN, and he was saying that the 6-game suspension means the Titans will have to find a new right tackle to start the season. He said options are, this is the backup left tackle, Jamarco Jones, a 2023 6th-round pick, Jalen Duncan, and Andrew Rippich, among others. Free agent options may be limited. Yeah, they're all signed somewhere, Other words, you're bleep out of luck, So I'm looking at this, and, this particular start, I actually had Tennessee. This is their schedule. I had them actually upsetting the Saints in week 1. But like I said before, meaning, was it yesterday, day before yesterday, Derek Carr is got a major chip on his shoulder. He's going to be coming out like he's on fire. in training camp. He's already been lighting it up in mini camps because he was cut by the Raiders, made his wife cry and all that. I think I said it yesterday and mentioned it yesterday's program. Mike Thomas is back at wide receiver. Chris Olave. This team's going to be good. Now, Tennessee's got was it Dennis Allen's their head coach down there in New Orleans. I like Tennessee's head coach better. They got a coaching advantage in Tennessee under Mike Vrabel. They've been known to be road dogs. I mean, they'll go on the road and play some really good football when you least expect them to play well. They'll go all the way across the country and beat a Seattle in a very rough, hostile environment. Seattle. They'll push a Kansas City team to push them to overtime when Kansas City won the Super Bowl last year with a backup quarterback. But that being said, I think they'll probably lose that game now, because this guy's been suspended for 6 games. Then they got the Chargers, who had said probably the best receiving core in the NFL right now, depth-wise, adding in Quentin Johnson there from TCU, this Charger team with Justin Herbert. So you've got Derek Carr. I thought you had a shot at him. Now you're going to be plugging your offensive line all over the place here. And too many questions everywhere else. I like the draft pick. I'm not sure about Andre Dillard, but, who they got? Cam Jordan at a really good pass rusher there down in New Orleans. So I think the Saints will beat them. I think the Chargers with Justin Herbert's going to beat them. Then they got to go play Cleveland against Deshaun Watson. That revamped team, I think they'll beat them. That's 0-3. And then they're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, arguably the best team in the NFL next year, this coming up September. So you're talking 0-4. And then, then they go on the road. They do play a Colts team. They'll be desperate at that point. Anthony Richardson, 1-4. And then they come back and then they travel all the way. They come back home to Nashville after this is, for example, in week 5. They go on the road, go to Indianapolis, come back to Nashville. Then they go to London or something and play Baltimore. So, this team could be 1-5 at their bye week in week 7. At their bye week in week 7, and then come back in week 8. Okay, so then after that, they got Atlanta at home, and then they got to play Pittsburgh on the road, and then 2 times against Jacksonville. Still got to play at Miami, and then Houston's much better this year. They could go on a run. But it's a long shot with that patchwork offensive line. Here's the problem. How do you know that Tannehill and Henry's going to be healthy, or Tannehill per se, after you're playing Khalil Mack in week 2, you're playing Myles Garrett. These are defensive ends here. In week 3, that Cincinnati front 4, which has been shown to be good and physical. And then a couple of weeks later, you got to play the Ravens. That's murder row. So what I'm saying is, at the bye week of week 7, you could be thinking about playing Will Levis, the quarterback, or the other guy that they drafted last year, pinned on who's the second or third quarterback. So they can already essentially, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but they can essentially be rebuilding by week 7. That being said, I've wrote Tennessee off before in the past with Mike Vrabel, and they have no quit on them. They have absolutely no quit on them. Other coaches, I think they would have quit in them. Jeff Fisher, at that point, Jeff Fisher is not a very sincere coach. One of his former players, I think it was Jason Fisk, used to say, I can always tell when Jeff's lying. Vrabel's not that way. Vrabel had the most, when he won Coach of the Year 2 years ago, Tennessee had the most injuries of any team in the league that year. So we'll see how it plays out, but they're going to get their nose bloody like nobody. If they can go 2-4 with this tackle being suspended like this, that would be a miracle. If they can go 2-4 against Cleveland, Cincinnati, Baltimore, LA Chargers, and on the road at New Orleans Saints. That's saying that they beat the Colts on the road. So, like I said, not a bubblegum guy. I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not a fanboy. I'm not one of these contrarians that go too far the other way. I'm just calling balls and strikes. They just don't look that good right now, And it kind of makes me think that maybe they should have just moved off Tannehill and both Henry and just completely start to rebuild this year and get those losses out of the way, get a better draft next year, and really revamp that offensive line and go with it at that point now. So there is a chance that Levis could be starting in week 6 in Tennessee already, because maybe Tannehill's hurt by then. He's 35 years old. Maybe he's just blasted and he's hurt again by then. Not unless the defense plays, lights out, which they could. They're very good up front. Those corners come back together, and Tennessee wins some, 17-14 last-minute field goals in 2023, possibly, but it's not likely. Not against Cincinnati and not against Cleveland for sure, and not against the LA Chargers. That's 3 right there. I just can't see, pending those quarterbacks just go out or something crazy. I can't see them winning those games regardless. So it is what it is. It's got to be frustrating. And I'll say this: Mike Florio said there's some kind of hint that maybe there's some more suspension coming, not from Tennessee, just around the league per se. But I will say this: if I am a coach in this league, I get every single player in a room. We have an emergency meeting and tell them what I just told you, that obviously the league has your name in a database with your phone. Your name pops up. We're going to be able to find that out. We're going to find out where you're gambling from and where you're gambling to. So, and they're keeping up with all the books. There's no telling how many books that they're keeping up with as far as gambling facilities. So that's the only way that the league is finding out about it. Nobody's sitting there talking about it in front of a league representative. Hey, I'm gonna throw $200 on so and so to win tonight, and you're sitting at the facility. There's no other reason how the league is finding out about it. So my point is, you got to be a stupid mother effer, even for football. And I know some of these guys ain't the brightest bulbs in the tree to get called after this. You have to be one stupid, degenerate mother effer to get called after this. And that doesn't even cover the story I'm about to get to, which, talking to the AFC South, this poor bleep from, what's his name? This cornerback here, Isaiah Rodgers, Corey, he bet a prop bet, and I said that this would happen. I told you guys this would happen. He bet a prop bet on a teammate to get the over for rushing yards in a game. So essentially, and he won $1,000. So essentially, that was insider information. So he probably did it on one of FanDuel or something. But this Isaiah Rodgers was a late draft pick because he's not making that much money NFL-wise, making about $860,000 a year. But he won $1,000 bet. Now he's been suspended because what he did was not what Fruitt did, which is bet online football in the facility. He bet on his team he bet on his team in a game to do a prop bet. That's what I said the league was afraid of. Like I said, it was only $1,000. But yeah, that's a precedent that the league does not want to have. Okay. So he's been suspended. At first it said a year, then it said indefinitely, which means he might not be back next year. So he lost that $860,000 $1,000 off of $1,000 bet win. And on top of that, the Colts cut him today. So when he comes back, he don't have a job. But maybe he'll get a job. I kind of feel bad for him as being that stupid. I got empathy for these guys. I don't know why. I guess because I know how hard it is to make the NFL. These injuries and all that bruising and icing over and putting your body through all that. And you get these big paychecks and you want to gamble and have some fun. I like to do it too. But if I'm making that kind of money, there's no way I'm going to jeopardize that. But I'm looking at it from a 41-year-old person who's been through hell and hot water when I graduated college. When I went to recession, had to work and deal with some of the stupidest mother effers on the planet and had to be told what to do, even though I knew what do their job better than them. Then if I had got put in a situation where I get that NFL money where I didn't have to listen to somebody else, then I would hang on to that opportunity more. A lot of these guys don't have my kind of experience, and you could see they're just throwing it away. Now, this guy's probably suicidal. Maybe he should go talk to a shrink after this. I would, if I'm his dad, I would try to, get him squared away because I'm sure he's bummed out. He's going to be suspended for the whole season, if not longer. So the Colts are out. They're starting cornerback today. They cut him, so they got to find another cornerback there. They're going to be bad anyways. They're probably going to play Anthony Richardson week 1. That's why I think Tennessee will beat them. But that's not a lock. But I think they'll beat them. So they went on, suspended him, and then after the league suspended him, he won't have the Colts to come back to. So, okay, so that also is that broke today. All right. Now, staying in the AFC South, all this just all the teams in the AFC. Maybe that's why they're not winning that much. The winning would the Jacksonville have like a 9-8 record last year because they won the division by one game. So now Jacksonville, Cam Robertson. I said this was going to happen because I knew that this was going to happen. This was reported that the starting left tackle, Corey, the starting left tackle for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I knew he was going to be suspended for PED. This is a little bit more understanding than that other stuff. Okay, PED, maybe this is some kind of supplement or something like that. But that's another thing. You got to check every little thing you put in your body. Just because GNC has it or it's not, air quote, listed as a steroid, that doesn't mean it's not on the NFL's ban list. You have to do this stuff. And Mike Golick from Mike and Mike, he used to say this all the time. He said, the players all say the same thing. You say, why do players get liquored up really bad and go out and drive home? He says it's the same thing with steroids or anything else. It ain't going to happen to me. It'll never happen to me. Long story short, Cam Robertson, now he's suspended 4 games. He's the left tackle for Jacksonville. My concern about Jacksonville, a lot of the national media is going to jump all over Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk. Remember they got Calvin Ridley, the guy who got suspended a year ago for gambling. The first guy to get suspended for gambling, that genius. He gets suspended. But he's a star player coming out of Alabama. Very good wide receiver. He was turning into the one with the Falcons. Long story short, he's back. So they got him. They got Christian Kirk. They brought back Ingram at tight end. Really good team. Really good pass rush. But Jawan Taylor, their right tackle, they let him go in free agency. Kansas City re-signed him as a right tackle, flipped him over to right, thought they may use him as left. Then they used him as right tackle. I talked about that with Kansas City where they botched their Orlando Brown issue and they lost their left tackle, but they got a right tackle. But now, so the Jags for the first 4 games, they don't have their right tackle from this time last year, nor their left tackle. And they signed a guy. They did, draft a player with the 27th pick here. This Hutchinson guy. I'm trying to see what it was. Draft picks. I'll name his name here in just a second here. But you're not going to depend on a tackle out of Oklahoma right off the bat to play left. This Aiden Harrison, he's a tackle out of Oklahoma. So they're another team that I can't see them setting the world on fire because they didn't do anything in free agency as far as the tackle is concerned. Now, Doug Peterson, head coach there, dropped the ball down a lot, do some gadget plays. They can do that. But looking at their schedule, they play at Indy in week 1, but they got Kansas City in week 2. Normally I say, well, hey, they can maybe push Kansas City to the brink and knock out Kansas City. No, not this time. They'll lose that Kansas City game. And then they got to play Houston at home. Well, Houston went down there last year and beat them at home. I don't think it'll happen this time around. But remember, Houston had a pretty good draft. They got a pretty good pass rusher there. I think they'll beat Houston, but they're going to have their hands full, folks. And then they got to go to Europe for 2 weeks. For week 4 and 5. They're going to play Atlanta in Europe, and then they got to play Buffalo in Europe. So they'll lose one of them. So they'll be about 3-2, 2-3 to start the season. And they got to go play at New Orleans, at Pittsburgh. They got to play the 49ers at their bye week. Now, they'll have Cam Robertson back by then, but they've also played Cincinnati, Cleveland, Baltimore. And so towards the end of the season, they'll play Tennessee. So this is going to hurt them as well. This is going to hurt Jacksonville as well. My thing is when you're replacing both tackles, this is my concern, even with Doug Peterson as the head coach here, that there's a possibility. He's a little lanky, can be a little slow-footed at times. I can see a possibility of Trevor Lawrence getting hurt. People's never thought about that. He's a great player, former number 1 pick. I like Trevor Lawrence a lot. I'm just saying, but when you got both tackles out like that, and you're plugging a rookie in there, you better be. And I read an article, and one of the writers says he thinks they'll be okay, but I'm not sure. Is this writer a Kool-Aid drinker? Is he one of those fanboy air quote types? I don't know. But I do know when you lose both tackles like that and you're not plugging at least one with the veteran that you have a lot of faith in, you are pushing the envelope. You're pushing the envelope and you're taking a chance. I remember when Whitworth retired, and that's a left tackle for the Rams at the end of the Super Bowl when they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. And they used this guy named, what was his name? He filled in a few weeks, Nate Boom or something like that. And when they got into the regular season, he did not hold up whatsoever. And of course, we know what happened. Stafford had his elbow problems, and the backups, they were just getting blown off the ball like nobody's business. And the Rams had a really bad season. And Sean McVay was contemplating retirement, taking a TV job for a few years. It's the most important, most underrated unit in all of football now, especially since everything is predicated on offense now. So it's get to the other guy's quarterback and protect your quarterback. That's still the issue, because sometimes you can't just drop it off every play now. Even Tom Brady, when I started seeing these guys fall off in training camp, I said, yeah, Brady stayed 1 year too long. And, man, I don't know how they figured out, but they did squeeze their way into playoffs. And then once they played Dallas, they got their clock clean. But a lot of the games were hard to watch, even with Brady playing, with his amazing release. So it's a lot to be desired of the Tennessee Titans in 2023, and there's a lot more questions than answers about a lot of teams' Super Bowl sleeper, Jacksonville Jaguars, coming up this season as well. So that was a lot. I mean, that's a mouthful. And again, I do agree with Mike Florio. Apparently, these players simply did not know that. They did not have about betting on non-sports, non-football stuff at the facility. I just don't think they knew that, that's my sense. Let's see if I've got anything else here in my notes, folks. So I was going to break down, let's see, I am lost here on my notes. I was going to break down the NFC South, but I will say this. So the Saints are really in the driver's seat now. That, like I said, they have Tennessee in week 1. They've got the veteran defensive line. They've got a lot of veteran skill players coming back. They might not have Alvin Kamara, but it's a running back position. John Gruden's been working with the quarterback down there. So, it possibly, you look at a team like a Carolina Panthers, and I want to say Tennessee and Jacksonville play them too, because they're playing the NFC South. And this Carolina team, Tennessee plays Carolina at home. That's not a given with their defense. Right off the bat, they made their first-round pick overall, the starting quarterback there. Now, my mind's went blank who the starting quarterback is there. Carolina, OLINA, Panthers, depth chart. But I'm looking at their defense down there, and they could be a sleeper. I mean, they very well could be a sleeper team in the South here, and it's not saying much here. Bryce Young, I don't know why I missed, but Young was so sharp in the mini camps. He's already been listed as a starter. You got J.C. Horn here, which is his. That is Joe Horn. Remember Joe Horn, Corey? It's wide receiver for the Saints back in the day, 15, 20 years ago. That's his son. He was a receiver. This guy's a great cornerback. Okay. So, you got guys like him, Shy Tuttle, Derek Brown on that front defensive line, Shaq Thompson, Dante Jackson, J.C. Horn. Very good defense there when healthy. Very good. So Tennessee's got to play teams like that. So does Jacksonville. The team that you think, we'll punk out this rookie quarterback, and before you know it, you're looking up and you're on the road or whatever, even at home, and you're down late in the game. This guy's got the ball, and they're running the clock out, converting first down after first down. So I did have some notes here, and I did not get to it because I got so caught up on this other breaking story. But I did have some thoughts here on Steph Curry. I guess I could talk about this. I mentioned yesterday about the Golden State Warriors. Going back to the round ball, because I almost forgot this story, but I realized I got some time here. Look at Steph Curry's age. All right. 36 years old. Look at Klay Thompson, 34, going to be 34. Draymond Green, 34 years old. 38-year-old Chris Paul. We just talked about Phoenix is much better if they don't get Kyrie Irving. They don't even have to get Harden. I don't know why that was been mentioned, but they need a couple bench players, right? Mentioned Denver. Didn't even mention the Clippers yesterday. Clippers may get Harden as well. Okay. When you start talking about the Western Conference, the Lakers are better than them. The Kings are hungry and up and coming and may make some noise. That's just the West, okay? And, and maybe this is why Bob Meyer left. These men are so unconfrontational nowadays. I would look at this, and I don't know if Steph Curry does not have a no trade clause or not. If he does have a no trade clause, he probably should. He's a star player, superstar. I would just say, hey, listen, man, this team, that was it. That was their course. I mean, people want to talk about Jordan Poole and all. No, this team showed their age last year. They looked slow at times last year. Well, they played really fast. They looked slow. If you've seen them next to the Kings, they looked slow last year, and they still beat the Kings. And they looked small and at times slow against the Lakers, who had some young players, Ryu Hachimura, Austin Reeves, Anthony Davis in his prime, healthy, but he's still, quote, in his prime, 29 years old, wearing them out. Looney's not doing nothing. Wiggins goes on a hiatus for 6 or 7 weeks with a personal problem. He's not been leaned in. He can't carry that team, is what I'm saying. And you really got to look at and think to yourself, maybe I should just break this team up, and thank everybody for their service and say, listen, Draymond, Clay, Steph, you're welcome to come here anytime with your family. You could stay for free if I'm the owner. That's what I tell them. You bring me 4 rings. We'll get you executive suite. We'll treat you like royalty. But the truth of the matter is you're old, okay? It's called Father Time. It's undefeated. You could get a lot of draft picks for Steph Curry, man. Wouldn't Steph Curry look good in a Knicks uniform? He lit them up quite a few times. I think he put 50 on them a few years ago. And a lot of people discussed this Chris Paul thing saying, well, Steph Curry won't have to carry the ball up. Right. He wouldn't have to carry the ball up. He could play off the ball off a young 26-year-old Jalen Brunson, and he can kind of roam around instead of being harassed 94 feet or whatever when he takes the ball out. He can monitor his minutes. They got a lot of young stars there, young prospects, a lot of draft picks. You could get quite a bit for a Steph Curry, I'm just throwing the Knicks out as an example, but a contender could use a good shooter off the ball like Steph Curry. But the more I think about it, this Golden State team should simply blow up. You should blow this team up. They're not going to win nothing next year. They'll be lucky. If these other teams are healthy, they can add a player. I mean, maybe if they add Giannis, that would change my mind. No, that's not going to happen. But they'll be lucky to get a playing game next year. The old adage is, and that's the thing. There's too many sensitive people in the NBA, man. You just talk to the guy straight and listen, man, we appreciate everything you did, but this is a business. We're not going to win anything here. At one point, I mentioned this the other day, they're $500 million over the cap. $500 million at one point. Now, that's a lot better now since they got rid of Poole. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know how immature Poole is. But they moved off Wiseman. They moved off Poole. That's their 2 young guys. And who else you got there? Wiggins. I mean, that's the only guy you could build around. Everybody else, I mean, you're talking mid-30s. That you have to. This is called reality. I'd trade everybody, me personally, and not just. And I know next year's draft ain't what this year's draft was, but that doesn't mean you can go up to 7 years in this new CBA and build draft picks that way. But I do think it's time for Golden State to blow this thing up if it's me. If they would go and blow it up, my only other suggestion is you got to move two of the big three. You're going to move off Clay and Draymond, and they don't want to do that. So what they're going to do is they're going to run it till the wheels fall off. And I'll be honest with you, if they go to battle with this team, they might not even make the playoffs. Like I said, they're lucky to get a play-in team. That's when they add a player. Not unless Wiggins comes up and be Superman all of a sudden. And guys that normally miss 35 games, all of a sudden, Steph plays that extra amount of games, 60 games you're not going to get. Clay, you're not going to get 60 out of Clay. And you're not going to get it out of Draymond Green. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. They couldn't win a road game last year. I don't think that's that much of team chemistry. A lot of that is just simply not playing defense, maybe because your legs are dead and you're eating into your depth because they've traded away a lot of their young players. So part of me thinks, that maybe they just caught lightning in the bottle, man. They caught lightning in the bottle between Bob Myers and, of course, Jerry West, as that was he was involved in the early architectural of this team. Now, I know he moved on since then and he moved to Memphis and stuff, but let's go back about 10, 11 years. He was involved some with the architectural of this team. And I thought maybe Bob Myers is gone, and you got to look, hey, they've missed a few times. They moved off Poole and moved off Wiseman. Those are young prospects. And now your core is in their mid-30s. So that's something to think about, And I kind of winged that because I was so caught up in this other news that broke this afternoon, but I actually got that take out, folks. That's good sports talk, man. Like an old preacher used to say, that'd go to that. Man, that's good preaching right there. Brother Calloway from Baptist Church up there, Stephen, we used to go to your grandfather's church there. If you guys like the show, share the show. Now, I'll have Carlos Mad New Yorker Chavez in tomorrow. I'll ask him about some of these topics, see what he thinks the Knicks should do. Knicks got a bunch of young players. They got, if you're the Knicks, I'll say this and I'll let you guys go. You don't want to overdo it. Make sure you get the right player. From what we saw by Denver's championship run, even Golden State last year, even Milwaukee the year before that, these players have chemistry. Lakers get more role players. They get chemistry guys. I disagree with Colin Cowherd about Austin Reeves. I say if you got a core chemistry guy there and you got to pay a little extra money for a young player like that, go ahead and pay a little extra money because it's hard to find in this league. Throwing together a bunch of stars, we saw how many times that doesn't work. Just adding on players and numbers and statistics and not measuring personalities and stuff. We saw how many times that doesn't work. Okay. So anyways, I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place here on SportsSkope.